Hello, this is Bruno, pelletier-bacquaert. So today I'm continuing with summertime, and in this video I will attempt to demonstrate how we can use specifically the chord changes of the song to improvise. Whereas on the previous video I was showing you how I was targeting essentially the melody. So I was purposely playing very simply in order to retain the shape of the melody and, more or less the notes of the melody. So today it's the opposite approach, where I'm not thinking so much about the melody, or at all, really, honestly, but I'm going to just think of the chord changes. Now, of course, the melody has some chord changes in it. So if I'm hitting some of those chord changes, it's not necessarily because they're part of the melody. It's really more in today's case that I'm thinking of the chord tones. So chord tones, basically we're talking the 3 or 4 notes of each chord. And you will be able to follow the changes I'm thinking of, because there will be a PDF linked to this video, so you can certainly download it and examine it. Okay, so first chord is D minor. D minor, which, since it's a tonic minor, I may turn into a 6th chord. So it's going to be a D minor 6, right? But, we can actually just think of a D minor triad. So just D, F, A, D, F, A. You can think of those notes. If it's D minor 6, then we'll add a B note. So it would be D, F, A, B. I'm avoiding the 7th, and that's maybe another can of worms that I would prefer not to open in today's video. But let's say that I'm avoiding the 7th, and to retain the tonic sound of this minor chord, I'm going to think of it either as a minor triad, D, F, A, or D minor 6, D, F, A, B. Okay, so that would be the notes of my D minor. Okay, next chord is E half diminished. So in this position, I could have this arpeggio, and then A7. So I might as well play the notes maybe straight. So far in time I would have to that, and then resolve into my D minor, which then turns into a D7. So I'm going to have D, F sharp, A, C, D, D, F sharp, A, C, D. And then it goes to G minor, so G, B flat, D. Okay, and then again 2-5, so E half diminished to A7 here, or. Okay, and that's the first half of the song. So if I were trying to improvise with this part, I highly recommend, by the way, that you break down songs that you work on. You don't have to play the whole form immediately. Just break it down into segments of 2 measures, 4 measures, the first half of the song, and so forth. So let me see if I can improvise with the arpeggios, more or less, that I was showing you. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, that's the first half. Right off the bat, you may have noticed something I did intuitively, I'll confess, but important, something I was actually going to discuss. I did not, number one, I did not play all of those arpeggios from the root always. I'm not always starting from the root, which we should do at first, right? Just to make sure we hit the right notes. But I was sort of navigating through them, but also I was connecting some of those arpeggios with chromaticisms, half steps. You know, I think it's, for instance, when I got into my G minor, I went this way. So here's my G minor arpeggio. It's G, B flat, D, G, B flat, D, F, G, right? But I could approach with a half step like this. And for that matter, any note of the arpeggio may be approached with a half step. Starting with the very first chord, my D, F, A, instead of going D, F, A in either direction, I may approach some of those notes with a half step. Could do this kind of thing. Right? So get your ear accustomed to hearing those half steps into your chord tones. I'm not going to talk about the enclosures and the whole business, because that could be the topic of another book, really. But just half steps from below into any note of your arpeggio. That's already a lot. You can already accomplish a lot of interesting sounds with that alone. Just make sure you mix them up. In other words, it's not always going to be the half step, but you can have something like this. If I approach my E half diminished, you know, I could go this way instead of going the first two notes of the arpeggio. I could go or you know, I could do those kind of things. So that's a really important thing. So let's take a look now at the second half. So the second half is pretty much like the first one. So D minor, right, and then E half diminished. D minor, again my D7. So here, say I approached the B flat, the third of my G minor, with a half step from above this time, but it's just a half step to connect into the chord tone. So basically the third line of the tune is the same as the very first one. Where it gets real interesting is when I have this this sequence of the G minor 7 to C 7 to F major to B flat 7 to E minor to A7 to the D minor. So that's a lot of chords all of a sudden. I mean, the melody gets busier, and harmonically we can squeeze in all those chords. And I particularly like that B flat dominant after the F here, right? And then going to the E minor and then into the D minor. Diatonically, we could have played that chord as a major 7, the B flat. Could be a G minor, C7, F major, B flat major 7, and then E minor to A7. But I like the dominant quality here. It's unstable enough because we continue. Okay, so we could play the arpeggios here as well. G minor, C7, F major, B flat, dominant, E half diminished, A7, and then D minor. So that's something you can do. What I would recommend, since the chords move by very quickly, you could arpeggiate every other chord, but make sure you resolve into the third of the one chord that you're not arpeggiating. In other words, G minor, and then hang on to that E, which is the third of my C dominant, right? So I would have this 3, 4, and then F, that's the third of my B flat chord, and then E half diminished, and then hang on to the C sharp, which is the third of the A7, and then resolve here, maybe, right? So in time I could have something like this, 3, 4, with the D. Let me play it again because it's kind of an important part here. So G minor into the C chord, right? F major. Now entering the B flat. E minor, 7 flat 5. Hang on to that C sharp, and then resolving to the D minor. Okay, in time again. 3, 4. Something like that. Interestingly, also, another way to connect those chords could be starting from the third. So doing that kind of sort of descending thing. Let me call out the notes of the chords that I'm entering here. So I'm thinking my first chord is G minor, right? So I'm going to start with from the third, so it's B flat, and then I land into the third of my C chord, right? And then I'm going to continue down, and then this A note is the third of my F chord, right? Now I'm going to, instead of continuing down into the G, I'm going to find my G here. And then now that's the third of my B flat chord. And I'm continuing down. And then, so this G is the third of my E, half diminished. Instead of continuing down, I'm jumping up an octave. And that's the C sharp, which is the third of my A. And then finish this way. From the C sharp, I'll go to B flat, maybe. Okay, so in time. And I'm landing into the F, which is the third of my D minor. Okay, there's different ways to do this very thing. You can jump, because you have to reach the octave, because otherwise it keeps going down and then we run out of notes. You know, we just run out of notes here. So we have to jump back an octave instead of continuing the descent. And what I'm trying to say is you can make that switch in different places. So instead of going down to this G here, I'm going to go up to this G up an octave, and then I can continue down. And instead of going down to this F, I'm going to go up to this F. And then continue, instead of going down to the B, I'm going to go up this way. Okay, that's another way. What else could I say? Very important. Instead of targeting then all of the notes of the arpeggio, the 1, the 3, the 5, and or the 7, what you can do is just edit this and only try to hear the thirds and sevenths. After all, they are the most important notes, right? So if you are clear on what your 3-note shapes would look like this, you know, then D7, and then G minor. You may insert A minor and B flat major here as an option, and then E half diminished to A7, and then again second half, E minor, A7, D minor, and then here I'm going to jump to G minor, C7, F major, B flat 7, E minor, A7, and resolve into the D minor 6, right? So let's get rid of the roots, and I'm just going to have this 2, 3, 4, E minor, A7, D minor 6, and then just going up a half step, this becomes D7, and then G minor, A minor, B flat major, and then this is E minor. I'm only playing those, the third and the fourth strings, so just the thirds on the 7th, second half of the tune. For E minor, A7, D minor, and then I'm going to jump up to this C minor, G minor, I mean, C7, F major, B flat, E minor, A7, and then resolution. So it's nice if you play those notes linearly. So I could play. That sounds right on the money. You know, we hear nothing but thirds and sevenths in this case, so we really clearly hear the changes. So get used to finding some of those thirds and sevenths. Still, I would say for now, just stay on the 3rd and 4th string, but maybe your D minor 6, instead of doing it here, you could look at it here. Same shape, actually. I have here F and B, whereas here I have B and F. But it's the same notes, right? Your E minor could be here, A7. For D7, I just move up a half step. Here's my G minor. You can stay on G minor to make your life easier. And then go maybe to this E minor or this E minor. Okay, so you want to be able to find those notes. It's still the same, the 3 and the 7 of each one of those chords. 6. If I'm playing the D minor 6 on the 1 chord, and get used to hearing those notes, and it's going to be particularly effective again on that very last part, the 4 last measures. Okay, so let me just improvise a little bit. My metronome is not here. Can you believe this? It's in the other room, and I'm not going to stop the video and get the metronome. I should, right after I keep telling you guys to use the metronome all the time. But I will do it without the metronome. But I'm just going to improvise. Maybe I'll take a couple choruses and then try to illustrate the points I made today. Now, the reason why I say try to before I actually start doing this, when we improvise, or at least when I improvise now on a song like this, well, I'm not going to say, oh, I'm only going to improvise from the chords, or I'm only going to improvise from the melody. I was doing this to show you those two different approaches on those two videos, right? But in what I would consider a real-life situation, I'll just use both concepts. You know, I'll maybe use the bits and parts of the melody, but also emphasize the chord changes with, you know, an occasional arpeggio here and there, and then go back to bits and pieces of the melody, and then, you know, more chords. So it's kind of becomes a little bit of both. You know, we can't just have one approach only. Would it be, again, simply for the fact that, as I was saying earlier, that the melody notes for the most part are chord tones. So where do you draw the line? You know, what is the melody and what are the chord tones? You know, a lot of them are the same notes. Okay, so let me just improvise a little bit, and then we'll wrap it up. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4. that's that. One last comment. The arpeggios I showed you, I only played them in this one position, but please explore them everywhere. So the D minor, you would have it here, E have diminished, A, right, they're all there, D7, G minor, all those chords are there, right? And even at the end, you have your G minor to your C7, F major, and so forth. So all those chords, try to find them, stay in the same area, you know, just get all the arpeggios in one area, all the same arpeggios in another area, and so on. Okay, this is it. I'm done for today. So thank you for watching this. Click around, up, down, you know, watch some of those other videos, and maybe go in particular to the previous one where I was discussing the melody. Bye.